moderator. Do we have a count from the police officers, please? I'm sorry. 700? Okay, that is the count. Sir, would you make sure that there are no registered voters in the auditorium at this time? I thought he said 700.
700.
Okay, all registered voters should be here in the gym. I'm going to ask that the people that are standing in the back against the wall, if you want your vote to be counted, that you please get to one of the sections. We have some seats down here. If it's at all possible, please come and take a seat so that it helps with the counting. We can't have moving targets. No, there's not. Okay. Now, I'm just going to give a quick, for anyone that is the first year here, the restrooms are located across the corridor, the commons area, and on the right-hand side. The exits, of course, are behind us, and both of them at the back of the gymnasium. The election of the moderator has been conducted. Those votes will be counted and certified at a Board of Canvass meeting on Monday, May 11th at 11 o'clock. Is there anyone that has not cast their vote on moderator? We'll give you a few more minutes. We will give you till 9:45, and then we will close that election. Now, I'm going to introduce the moderator, Mr. Michael Burke, and he will commence with the meeting.
Nancy. Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'd like to call this meeting to order and affirm that we have a quorum of 301 electors present. If we can all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'm going to reintroduce the clerk in a second, but just so folks know who's up here, because I know not everybody knows everybody. He was sitting down there, but to the far right would be Dave Robert, the tax assessor. Nancy Mello will be sitting down below. The clerk, our solicitors, Mr. Ursula, Mr. Tights, Mr. Karen, the chair of the Budget Committee, Mr. Coulter, the vice chair of the Budget Committee, Mr. Boland, the president of the Town Council, Ms. Aruda, the vice president of the Town Council, Mr. Gonslow, town administrator, Mr. Burgandy, the chair of the school committee, Mr. Rierick, the superintendent of the schools, and Mr. Fiore, the business manager for the school district, just so you have an idea of who's there. Madam Clerk.
The warning for the financial town meeting, and I'm just going to let you know that pursuant to Chapter 3 of Title 45 of the General Laws of the State of Rhode Island, it has met the required posting at least 7 days before the 9th of May 2009 in 3 or more public places in the town of Tiverton. And the warning has been duly posted, and there are copies here should anyone request them. I'm not going to read through the whole warrant. Okay, that's the end of the clerk's business.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, yes. Just some procedural pieces first. The tellers have been sworn in. That's what took us a little bit longer towards the end there before we started. We will go to procedural rules. If everybody has their docket, that's the one that has the pink cover. In terms of, I want to outline, and I think, Nancy, these were provided? Or no, these weren't. If there's a motion that's passed for a paper ballot at any time, which for us would mean a machine ballot, the manner in which it will happen is I will call sections. So we have section C and D over there, B and A over there. This will be left floor, my left, right floor, and I'll probably do the front separately from the back. And have you go out, as that section finishes up, I'll call another section. The Board of Canvassers folks will provide you with a ballot. You will take that over. There are some privacy booths out there. You can use those if you like. You must mark those with the pens that are out there, which are the voting felt tip pens like in a regular election. Otherwise, the machine won't count them. There'll be yes or no votes. You put them in the machine. After everyone has their opportunity to vote, who wants to vote, the chair of the canvassers will take the tallies off those, bring them forward. We will announce those tallies. They will reset the machines in case there are paper ballots later that are asked for later on the agenda. It will be time consuming, so we're going to try to make sure it works as quickly as possible if that happens. And then if we can move to page A of your docket, the moderator's resolutions. And I'm just going to start. Be resolved that the town, resolution number 1, be resolved that the town administrator or any town department head, including school superintendent and director of library services, may participate in these proceedings but may not vote in these proceedings if that person is not a registered elector of the town of Tiverton.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second? Second. Okay. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, aye? Aye. Any opposed, nay. Thank you. Resolve number 2, resolve that in order to conduct an orderly flow of business, the moderator will recognize the chairman of the Budget Committee or his designee to place the Budget Committee's recommendation before the electors. Following the Budget Committee's recommendation, the moderator shall recognize an amendment from the applicable department committee, if any, and no more than 3 amendments from the floor. All motions must be seconded. Discussion shall be allowed in the reverse order in which the amendments were presented and by any maker of an amendment prior to any votes taken. In making a motion or amendment, the elector shall 1, proceed to the nearest microphone, 2, state his or her name and address, and 3, state the motion or amendment, which must contain a specific dollar amount if voting on a financial matter. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Motion and seconded. Any questions on that or any discussion? Sir, can you come up to the microphone, please? Your name and address, too, first, please.
John Mortola, 267 Village Road. After the presentation of the budget, will there be opportunity for questions regarding budget line items?
Yes. Yes, as we get to those items, we'll be voting on those unless there's a motion otherwise. We'll be voting on totals of departments separately, so there'll be opportunities for those questions, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else? Hearing none. All those in favor, aye? Aye. Any opposed, nay? Thank you. 3, resolve that no motion that alters, amends, rescinds, or reconsiders any previous action shall be entertained by the moderator unless there are as many or more electors present as there were at the time the original vote was taken, and the person moving said motion shall have voted on the prevailing side and shall swear or affirm under penalty of perjury at the time of making a motion to reconsider. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. I have a second. Any questions? Okay, and I do want to clarify, because I know this was a bit confusing in the past. Prevailing side means the side that wins the vote. It's not the yes side necessarily. It could be the no side. So it's the side that gathers the more votes. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Nay? Okay. Be it resolved, number 4, that the town meeting shall be deemed to have received the written reports of the town officers and committees by this motion. They were in the back. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If you don't have those, were on the table on the back. I don't know if that table's still there. I can't see. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor? It is still there. All those in favor, aye? Aye. Any opposed, nay? Okay. Number 5, be it resolved that no motion to approve the remainder of the budget as recommended or requested or amended shall be approved unless said motion is adopted by a majority of the assembly. Do I have a motion? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye? Aye. Any opposed? Nay. Okay, and I'm going to move to the next. I do want to note that in the back we did provide, it's not intended to be comprehensive, but parliamentary procedure is tough for those who don't think about it every day. So we did provide a little snapshot guide to try to help folks along, so you can, hopefully it'll help follow the order of the meeting. I have a council resolution. Would the council like to present it?
Resolved that the voters of the financial town meeting approve setting aside a reserve fund of $300,000 as a restricted expense for the purpose of accounting for annual abatements, which will amount to approximately 1% of the levied taxes on real and tangible properties.
Is that a motion, Mr. Boland?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Does the council wish to speak to it first?
The purpose of this is historically, we abate about 1% of the real estate values in a reval year. Your notices have gone out. There is an appeal process which has been started where you can come and appeal the value of your property. And traditionally in that year, we've expended about 1% of that value. And that's why the council feels that this is necessary so we won't come up with shortfalls when we expend this rebate money or abatements.
Speaker, microphone 1.
My name is Joseph Souza, 49 Hancock Street. Do we not have $400,000 currently in the general fund?
Would you like somebody to answer that question, Mr. Souza?
Well, I think we do, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Would you like, please, yeah, you need to direct questions through the moderator.
I believe we do have $400,000 in there already. I question this for a reason. When a town enters negotiation, they look at the size of this, and if we have hundreds of thousands of dollars put away, an arbitrator is going to say to us, you can afford it. We are actually weakening our position when we negotiate contracts by doing this, and I would ask the people to not consider this, vote it down.
Joe, let me answer your
Mr.
question.
Boland, would you like to speak?
When you talk about a $400,000 surplus, we have $400,000 by the last audit report in the general fund, which is $800,000 short of where we should be, which is $1.2 million by charter. If we don't address this issue here, we could find ourselves falling either further behind. This doesn't put us in a bad position in negotiating contracts. It puts us in a bad position in bonding and so forth, because this is a general reserve that's called for in the charter, and it's really not supposed to be spendable money. It's a reserve.
Okay. Microphone number 2, Mr. Bennis.
Roger Bennis, Narragansett Avenue. My question is a question of clarification for the council. Is this strictly a set-aside from the general fund, or is it a set-aside and an increase in our taxes? That's not very clear the way it's listed here.
Mr. Boland, could you
This is a
answer?
$300,000 increase in the proposed budget where the abatements were not covered in there.
So if people vote for this, they're voting for an increase in taxes to pay the $300,000 amount. Correct?
Yes.
Thank
With
you.
the- with
I
the
think that
abatements.
clarification helps a lot of us make a decision.
The difference
Thank
in the difference in the tax rate is $14.73 without the abatements, $14.87 with the abatements. So let's get the number straight, and everybody will understand what it is going into this.
Mr. Karen?
Thank you. I just wanted to say that, reiterate what Don just said, that this amount of money represents approximately 1%, and then 1% increase on the tax levy. It also calculates to a 14-cent increase on the tax rate. And I also wanted to just state that the Budget Committee did consider a very similar resolve for $290,000, and that resolve was rejected by the Budget Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Karen. Mr. Souza?
I'll just say quickly that speaking with people that I know that have served and have negotiated contracts and that have lost in arbitration made that statement to me, and I tend to believe them. I think we would fare better if we vote this down.
Thank you. Any other
I will
discussion, Mr.
reiterate
Boland?
one more time. I will reiterate one more time. We are below the chartered amount. We're working with our revenue numbers to see to it that that number comes back to where it should be. It is below where it should be. It would put us in a dangerous position if we were to have to take another $300,000 from an already short general surplus. I don't think it's going to have that impact that you're stating, Mr. Sousa.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor, aye? Aye. All those opposed, nay. Nay. Nays have it. The second item on that page was a citizen's petition. I'm not sure if there's anyone here who signed that petition. I will read it. If there's someone who helped put forth that petition who would like to be the first speaker on it, please step forward to one of the microphones. This petition seeks to appropriate and expend the annual sum of $110,290 for 12 years for the purpose of acquiring a ladder tower for the Tiverton Fire Department. The amount paid annually will represent a financed amount of $950,000 over a 12-year period at 5.51% interest. This proposal is being sought because the item was not considered by the Tiverton Budget Committee in the docket for this year, and because numerous members of the Tiverton Budget Committee have advocated a maximum increase in the annual tax levy not to exceed 1% or zero. Because the Tiverton Budget Committee is recommending a slashed school operational budget in order to achieve the desired goal of a maximum levy increase of 1% to a 0%, and because these same Budget Committee members are squandering the limited ability to utilize tax revenues under the state-mandated cap of 4.75% to improve the community as a whole, we, the Tiverton taxpayers listed below, believe it is in the best interest for the town of Tiverton to acquire a fire apparatus ladder tower vehicle that will be used to save lives, provide fire protection to the community as a whole, assist in lowering our already too high insurance premiums by generating a more favorable national fire standard rating than currently exists, and to provide appropriate equipment for the health and welfare of the Tiverton Fire Department professional staff. Sir, are you one of the petitioners? No. No?
I just got a question on it.
Can I just want to find out if there's anybody who put this forward who would like to speak to the motion, you have that opportunity first. If not,
It needs to be moved before taking this vote.
thank you. Do I have a motion to move this forward? Thank you, Mr. Coulter. Mr. Souza, are you motioning? Are you-
No,
I-
I'd actually like to speak to it when I have a chance.
I'm just looking for a motion right now. If we don't have a motion to move, I'm sorry? Okay,
If there's no motion, it should
Michael Smith, 122 Kaufman Road. Make a motion to move the question.
we have no question before us, Mr. Smith. Are you moving the motion?
Move the motion.
Okay, do I have a second to the motion? I see a second around and hear a second. Okay, now, first, is there someone
Mr.
who put this?
Moderator?
Yes,
Point of order, may I be heard, please, sir?
sir?
It is my opinion.
Can you need to speak clearly into the mic?
Robert Coulter, Vice Chair, Lawton Avenue. It is apparent to me that this petition, aside from however faulty it may be on the merits, is out of order because it violates the charter, and that would be specifically Section 203 of the charter, which requires major expenditures exceeding $500,000, which this one would. Any borrowing must go to a referendum and not here. Now, I am aware that it is the opinion of the town solicitor that this body can approve this and then we will have a referendum after this. But I would submit that that could not possibly happen because such a referendum would have to occur within time limits that could not be met based on the time the petition was submitted. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Solicitor, would you like to render an opinion on that?
Sure. Just for the record, my written opinion has been submitted to the town council a couple of weeks ago. This was a duly filed petition within the time limits for this financial town meeting. So I believe it is in order to be heard here. As Mr. Coulter stated, I also believe that if this body approves it, it will have to also receive approval in a referendum. There are two sections of the town charter that apply, and they're not inherently in conflict, so therefore both would apply. If this body does not approve it, then there wouldn't be any point in having a referendum.
May I continue, sir?
Mr. Coulter?
Thank you. Just to follow up on that, my reading of the charter provision is that that referendum must occur within 45 days of the petition. The petition was filed on April 1st, and a public hearing has not been held on that on this petition. Therefore, it is, as a matter of a calendar, impossible for us to reach that referendum in a lawful way, and therefore it is out of order in this meeting as well. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to rule that for the purpose of this meeting, this resolution is in order, and, but however, folks would need to know that there would be a two-step process. If there are disagreements around the charter provisions regarding the second part of that process, those are issues that would be brought to the town council. So, again, just last time, anybody speaking who put this motion forward, who put this petition forward? Okay, if not, the first gentleman at microphone 2 was there first.
Hi, Ken McGovern, 30 Sherrill Drive, Tiverton. I only got one question, whether we approve or disapprove of the truck. Is it going to require 2 additional firemen to be trained and constantly on duty at all times to operate this vehicle?
Okay, I don't know.
That's where the cost would be.
Is that something,
because-
Mr. Boland, you can answer?
We don't have the information that's necessary. No, let me finish. Don't be snickering until I finish my comment. This is put forward not by the town. This is put forward by petition. We have to listen to this on the petition. I'm going to tell you that we don't have the information. I don't know if it's going to require extra people. I don't know if it's going to require another building to house this piece of equipment. I'm not in favor of this proposal because we don't have all the answers. It's $1.2 million. It's not 950. When you add the interest and take 110,000 over 12 years, we may need this piece of equipment. We can't afford this piece of equipment at this time. That's the key here, and that's why this has not been approved by the council. It's been asked for in the past and hasn't been approved, and I think that's one of the reasons the Budget Committee hasn't taken those considerations.
Chief Lloyd, would you like to respond to that question for informational purposes only?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Chief Robert Lloyd, Tiverton Fire Department, 85 Main Road. This piece of equipment, every member of the Tiverton Fire Department will be trained to operate, to drive, and to handle this piece of equipment and maintain it, just as we do currently with every single piece of apparatus that's in the department. We have other vehicles that we do not staff on a regular basis. The staffing is such in our department that our members are cross-trained and will move between different pieces of apparatus depending upon the call.
Thank you, Chief. Sir, did I answer your question? Thank you, sir. Mr. Souza, you're next.
Only to say that this piece of equipment, if purchased, is going to be a burden on the town as far as maintaining our fleet. We have a hard time replacing and maintaining the fleet as it is. To add this large vehicle in will be further strain. I'm not sure that it's going to help our department, and I would vote against it.
Okay. Gentleman in the back, number 2.
Hi, John Murray, West Mellow Drive. The only question I have is, has the town, obviously not, investigated using stimulus money from the federal government for this apparatus? The town, Nashville, New Hampshire, and also Indianapolis have purchased fire trucks via stimulus money from the federal government for fire apparatus. And if that's a way of getting a needed piece of equipment, the town should definitely investigate that and also investigate using federal money for expansion or improvement of fire stations, which is also provided in the stimulus package.
Mr. Karen, are you prepared to answer that?
Sure. I can state that the Budget Committee, from their perspective, has not looked into using stimulus money for such an apparatus. I can't speak for the other parts of town government.
Chief Lloyd, do you have a response to an Yes.
Yes, sir, Mr. Marauder. We have put forward an assistance to firefighter grant that we applied for last year. These grants are on a competitive basis across the nation, with less than 8 to 10% of them being given for vehicle acquisition. As of the last word I've got is that all that has been cut by the current administration in the White House.
The stimulus package.
In the stimulus package for firefighters, that section has not, off the top of my head, I can't remember what section it is, but that section of stimulus money has not come forward yet. There is consideration for fire stations in that. I have not heard of it on being on apparatus.
Okay. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay.
I really think if we wanted to, if we improve, approve whether or not for this truck that prior to a referendum about requiring the taxpayers to pay for this vehicle, that we investigate further alternate financing.
Thank you, sir. On Mike 1?
Kirby Payne, Village Road. I think another matter that needs to be considered is the cost of ownership, insurance, fuel, maintenance, and matters such as that, and the potential for mutual assistance from surrounding area fire departments.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bennis?
Roger Bennis. Hello? Roger Bennis, Narragansett Avenue. I would like to point out the fact that this town has a process for capital expenditures. The process is for the department head to present that information to the town council for appropriate discussion and investigation. Then the town council presents that information to the budget committee. That is the process. Now, when somebody follows that process and it fails, they can come to the meeting here at the FTM and pursue it additionally. However, that basic process has not been followed. It has not been properly investigated, and obviously, from my reading and my knowledge of the town, there are many statements in here, in this petition, that are totally false. Therefore, based on the credibility of the petition, I would guess the credibility of the numbers, not having been investigated by anybody, are also open to a certain amount of questionability. Therefore, I would recommend voting this down. Thank you.
Gentleman on 1?
Jim Odell, 130 Warren Avenue. I like to just remind people that we had a ladder truck for years. It rotted away, was never used. And the most obvious reason to vote it down is there's no money this year. Motion to table.
Motion has been made to table. Oh, help me out here. Point of information?
Could you just clarify, please? Mr. Moderator, could you please clarify what a motion to table would?
Yes.
Thank you.
On the table. Oh, here we go. Motion to table means that we're setting aside this temporarily. It can be brought back up later. Motion to table is a procedural motion.
I withdraw the motion.
Okay. Thank you.
Does the second need to be withdrawn, sir?
No. Mike 2.
Good morning, Mr. Moderator. My name is Tom Parker. I live on William Barton Drive in Tiverton. I'm a member of the Budget Committee, and I will note that this proposal was not submitted to the Budget Committee when the Budget Committee was considering the fire department's budget. And in fact, when the fire chief was present before the budget, he took exception to our questions. He got angry. He accused us of being a kangaroo court, and he got up and he left before this issue could be resolved. So I echo the previous speaker. This has not been staffed. It's not been chopped through the appropriate channels. And based on the lack of governance and the lack of discussion, I would recommend to the voters that this motion be disapproved.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Sir.
Jeffrey Belli, Birch Street. I have a question for the fire chief and this panel.
Okay, please direct a question to the moderator and I'll identify somebody to answer it.
My question is, if this ladder truck is purchased, will the future expenditures have to be approved to widen the roads in this town to be able to maneuver this truck beyond the main roads? I see Newport's fire ladder truck, and they have trouble maneuvering around their roads. Our roads are even narrower than Newport's.
Chief Lloyd, are you prepared to answer that? Or should I ask the Highway Department, the Public Works Department?
Mr. Moderator, the answer is no. We do not have to widen roads. Roads in Tiverton are established by ordinance. They are 22 foot in width. This vehicle is no wider, no longer than any of our other standard apparatuses. Might be a little bit slightly longer, but as far as the turning radius and such, we do not have to widen roads for it.
Thank you. Sir?
What about having the purchase of, ask for another bond for housing to house this vehicle?
Mr. Chief Floyd?
We have a station that this vehicle will fit into. It will be the South End Station on East Road. It will fit into that station.
My next question for you, Mr. Fire Chief.
Through the moderator, please, sir.
Will this apparatus be used mainly in Tiverton, or will it mostly be used in Fall River? Because here in Tiverton, we do not have a building high enough that would require such an apparatus.
Please quiet down so the chief can answer the question.
I cannot guarantee you this vehicle will not be used in Fall River. I can tell you that as of right now, just speaking with the Portsmouth Fire Chief, the Middletown Fire Chief, and the Bristol Fire Chief, who we all rely on mutual aid for, all three of their ladder trucks are going out of service for several weeks for repairs. To say that we do not have buildings high enough in Tiverton is not correct. It takes anything that is longer than the tallest ladder we have. The tallest ladder we have in the Tiverton Fire Department is 24 foot. That's all we have. Everything above that, this vehicle is used for. Last year, the Tiverton Fire Department responded to 670 fires in this community, a total of 2,243 calls all year long. We will use this on a regular basis, just as we did the one in 1991 that we had. The vehicle in 1991 went out of service because we could no longer acquire parts for it. That's why that truck was left on the side and it was not operated. At that point in time, it came before the Budget Committee, or it came before the Financial Town Meeting. There was no money appropriated for it. It has not been replaced. I know as chief in the 5 years that I have been here, every year I have put this forward for consideration.
Thank you. Okay, please, sir. Do you have any further, sir?
Well, my recommendation to the town council, as well as everybody here from the town, that we do vote this down. We do not have the money for this. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on this resolution? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion as read, if you need it reread, I will, but aye? Aye. All those opposed, nay. Nay. Motion fails. Okay. We're going to move on to page number 1. It's a series of resolves. If we can quiet down a little bit, I can direct my attention to Mr. Karen, who will start with resolve number 1.
Resolve that the town treasurer is hereby authorized and empowered to release to the parties legally entitled to redeem the same real estate conveyed to the town by the collector of taxes upon payment to the town of taxes, penalties, and expenses pertinent thereto, and to sell other parcels on which the period of redemption has expired. So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second that.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, aye? Aye. All those opposed, nay. Okay, motion carries. Resolve number 2, Mr. Karen.
Thank you. Resolve that the town treasurer is hereby authorized and empowered to borrow, if necessary, in the name and on the credit of the town, such sums of money as may be required for fiscal year 2010 for transacting the obligations incurred by appropriations made at this financial town meeting, such sums of money not to exceed, in the aggregate, the sum of $500,000.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none, all those in favor, aye? Aye. Any opposed, nay? I'm going to do that one more time. All those in favor, aye? Aye. All those opposed, nay? Nay. Ayes have it. If you wish to appeal the moderator, please step to the microphone and appeal the moderator. That is fine.
Mike Smith, Kaufman Road. I appeal.
Is there a second to that appeal? Okay, the motion is to appeal the decision of the moderator, which is that that last resolution carried. Any discussion?
Yes, this is a motion that's been on the agenda year after year, and all it does is it says that the treasurer is allowed, while we're waiting for taxes to be collected, to conduct business, and he can do that by borrowing. We haven't had to borrow. It's there to protect the town so its bills can be paid for that period, which is in that first quarter of the tax collection. This is no different and not giving any power above and beyond what's already been existing, and this resolution has been the same for as many years as I've been attending the financial town meetings.
Okay, any other discussion?
A point of order, please, sir.
Yes, sir.
But doesn't this open the town to a chance of having somebody take out a loan on the presumption they're going to conduct business for the town and yet run away with it?
Is that a question to somebody?
Whoever feels they can answer it, because it does open to me, giving the person, the treasurer, the opportunity to take out money in the town's name. The opportunity to
borrow money in the town's name, which must be accounted for in all accounting procedures. And we have an annual audit and so forth, and we have a bonding of our treasurer. So, I mean, this is just a standard procedure to allow us to be able to pay bills in the first quarter of any calendar year.
And further, does it not give them the opportunity to get to place funds in a budget that has been denied?
You know, this only accounts for money which is going to be spent for the appropriation that takes place at this financial town meeting. It does not allow the treasurer a $500,000 excess of what's approved by this meeting. These funds are used to pay bills which are incurred through this process you're in right now of the financial town meeting.
Okay. I'm going to ask for a show of hands on this vote. If you raise your hand when I ask for the yes votes, it means that you are approving my decision, which was that motion carried. If you raise your hand no, it means you're not approving that. Okay, so please, those who want to uphold the decision of the moderator, please raise your hand. Yes. Thank you. Please put them down. Those who do not want to uphold the decision of the moderator, please raise your hand. Okay. The ayes have it. That resolution carries. We're going back to that page. Resolution number 3, I believe we're on, Mr. Karen.
Thank you. Resolve that all non-recurring accounts be restricted for their intended purpose and that no transfers are authorized out of those accounts.
So moved. Second.
Motion moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, aye? Aye. Any opposed, no. Okay.
Resolve.
3, 4.
Okay. Resolve that once the electors of this financial town meeting appropriate the sum of $168,304 for the landfill closure restricted account under the Department of Public Works budget, said funds shall be placed in a reserve fund pursuant to RI General Laws 45-11-1 and are to be used solely for the purpose of landfill closure.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, aye? Aye. All those opposed, nay. Okay, ayes carry. 5.
Resolve that all funds received from the federal or state government for the purpose of reimbursing the town for any expenditure authorized by appropriations made as a result of this financial town meeting shall be deposited into the town's general fund as surplus.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Thank you. That passes. Number 6.
Resolve that any supplemental funds received above that which is anticipated per this budget document from the federal, state, or local government for the purpose of any school department past, current, or future operational expenditure shall result in an equal amount of appropriated funds being returned to the town's general fund as surplus.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion?
Yes, I have a...
Yes, Mr. Burgundy?
Yes, Jan Burgundy, 68 Indian Point Road, and Chair School Committee. This particular resolve is in a conflict with the law, basically, and the funds which are appropriated to schools cannot be returned to the general fund.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Nay. Please, okay, I'm going to take a hand count again. Oh, yes, thank you. When you raise your hand, I'm being reminded, please raise your hand that has your wristband on it. All those in favor of this motion, please raise your hand. Thank you. Put them down. All those opposed to this motion, please raise your hand. The ayes have it. Okay, we're moving on to page 2, which Mr. Karen will cover, which is informational.
We are not voting on these pages. I'm just going to go over them briefly. The total amount of expenditures recommended is $42,260,207. And on page 2, then, we have less anticipated revenues and reimbursements of, and there is a long list there of money that we anticipate getting, which that money adds up to $9,980,819. Then we also subtract $1,050,000 for the motor vehicle tax. And by taking the $42 million, subtracting the $9.98 million, and subtracting the $1,050,000, which leaves the following sum to be raised by taxation of $31,229,388. I'll now turn to page 4.
Just to note, page 3 is informational.
I'll only note on page 4 that this is a page that describes how the tax rate is calculated. And there's an explanation on the lower half of the page. The mathematics is on the top half of the page. There's an, oh, I'm sorry, page 3. I'm on page 3. Sorry. I'll just repeat that briefly. The page 3 is a tax rate calculation for informational purposes. We show how the rate was calculated last year. We show how it is proposed to be calculated this year. And at the bottom of the page is an explanation for how the tax rate is determined. I'll now turn to page 4.
5 is the start for the voting.
Do you want to?
5 is the start for the voting.
Yeah, I'm going to just go over this quickly.
Yep. Informational again.
Page 4 is for information purposes only. It's a page which has traditionally been in the docket, and the committee saw fit to leave there. It is a summary page of the expenditures by major departments, and I just mentioned that, again, for informational purposes. We will not vote on page 4.
Okay. So we're moving to page 5 at the top.
Point of order.
Mr. Bennis?
Roger Bennis, Narragansett Avenue. I would like to make an amendment to the school funding listed on page 4 in order to make a proper correction. I would like to add $2 million.
Sir, there's no motion before us. We're moving.
Well, I'm making a motion.
Go ahead.
I would like to add $2,733,142 to the last two columns, which are requested 2009, 2010 budget and Budget Committee recommendation 2009, 2010. The description in the left-hand column should read, school debt service. This will not increase the taxes 1 cent because the same amount will be deducted from the page 5 general government debt service by adding a note. See school debt page 4. This will add some truth to the docket. Now, like Diogenes, I am looking for an honest man to make a second to my motion
Sir,
for
I just
purposes
need, you can't
of
speak to the
discussion.
motion until it is seconded. Is there a second to that motion, first off? Okay. Can you give me the number again?
The number is $2,733,142.
And where was this at again?
This was on page 5, General Government Debt Service.
General government
Sorry,
debt.
page 7.
Page 7? We're not even on page 7 yet. You're out of order. You're out of order.
It's a correction of the...
Okay, but we're not on that page yet. If you would like to bring that motion forward later, we'll see if it's in order, but it's out of order right now.
All right, I'll bring it up later. Thank you.
Okay, so we're moving, I believe, to page 5? Are you
Page
ready?
5.
Page 5 at the top. We're looking at the school department expenses, and Mr. Karen, you have a motion.
The Budget Committee moves that the amount of $25,527,969 be appropriated for the school department for fiscal year 2010.
Second. Motion and second. Okay. First off, school committee has the opportunity to make any amendments first.
Yes. The budget number, $25,527,969 is what we have submitted, and that's a number which is 1.48% increase from the previous year.
So you have no other amendment to that?
For which we submitted to the school committee, to the budget committee, and that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Souza, I think you were first.
I'll be offering amendment.
Go ahead.
I move to amend by substituting the total sum of $25,353,915, comprising of $20,047,960 for operating and capital budget from local sources, and $5,305,955 for general state aid be appropriated to the school department for fiscal year 2010.
Okay, please, just so I have those numbers. Your total is $25,355,915.
Yes.
Your local is
$25,353,915.
3,000. The second number was
$5,305,955 from general state aid.
and your top number was?
25 million.
Oh, I thought you had another number in there.
No, the operating capital budget would be 25,047,960. 20 million.
20,047,960
960 from the local source.
Yeah. So just so I'm going to read it back to you. The top is 20 million, the local source. 20,047,960, correct?
Yep,
The state aid, 5,305,955, correct?
correct.
And the total, 25,353,915, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Second.
Was there a second? Okay. Did you have something on that? Okay. Just checking the math. Okay. That's amendment number 1. Do I have amendment number 2? Do I have a second amendment? Mr. Sanford, I believe you were next.
My name is Sanford Mantell,
Mr. Mantell.
80 Bud Way. I move to amend that motion.
Amend the original motion.
The amended motion.
Okay, you can amend the original motion.
Okay, I'm sorry, the original motion, sorry. Stand corrected. I move to amend by substituting the total sum of $25,353,915, comprising $20,047,960 for operating and capital budgets from local sources, and for general state aid of $4,852,762, which is the general state aid for fiscal year 2010.
If I'm doing my
Final
math...
number is $25,353,915.
Mr. Moderator,
Okay, hang on, please. I'm not sure how those numbers can add, because...
I'm sorry, I stand corrected.
Okay.
I added them wrong. I did it off the cuff. It's $24,900,722.
24,900...
722.
722.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. That's why we're checking.
Mr.
So just to reiterate, so folks have it, the motion is to change the local sources to $20,047,960, the general state aid to $4,852,762, with the total being $24,900,722.
That's correct.
Mr. Moderator, just a procedural question.
Motion. I'm sorry.
My question is, how can town of Tiverton vote on the state aid?
Okay. Well, hang on. We're working on motions first.
I have a question, though, and related to this number before you do any of these motions. George Alzaba, 63 Stony Hollow. You get the state aid here at $5,305,000, and nobody in this room knows what the state's going to give us. So if the state give us $4.8 million, that means the town has to come up with that money. So before you vote on this, you didn't vote for the $300,000. You cut in left and right. You're voting on a $5.3 million that you have no idea, and I guarantee you, even we have state reps here, that this number is not going to even come any close to that number. So how can you approve this, and the town's going to end up with $400,000 deficit to the school committee, and we have to cover it at the end of the year, which is, I think this number is wrong and fake.
Okay. I'm just going to interrupt because that's... Do I have any other amendments from the floor? Was there a second on Mr. Mantell's? Thank you. I'm sorry? Second. Okay. So I see no other motions from the floor. I'm sorry. Okay.
Could I make a, Mr. Moderator, could I have?
I'm going to go to number 2, and then Mr. Bagandi, and then Mr. Martin. Sir, on number 2. You. Yes, sir.
Actually, I just have a question about one of the line items in the operational expenditures. John Mortola, Village Road. Under purchased services, there's a figure of $3.79 million requested this year, which represents an increase over last year of over $625,000. Can we understand what that number is, what those purchased services are?
Mr. Rierick or Mr. Fiore, Mr. Bagandi?
I will pass the question to...
The vast majority of that increase can be attributed to our special ed costs, specifically out-of-district tuitions that we are obligated to under both federal and state law to pay for. So I'm sorry, it's for... Okay.
Speak up. Speak closer into the mic, Bill.
The primary reason for that increase is related to our special education costs, primarily our out-of-district tuitions. That means to provide services to children that we can't provide here as part of our Newport County Collaborative, special ed collaborative that we're part of. So the tuitions run anywhere from $27,000 a year upwards. We just had some in the 6 figures. And we had several children move in this year that we were not accounting for in our budget last year. And we are obligated to educate those children, and that's the vast majority of that increase, are our special ed tuition costs.
Okay. If you have a question, please come to the microphone. Mr. Martin is not next. Sir, are you done? I am, thank you. Okay. Mr. Martin.
Bob Martin, Hilton Street. A couple people brought up some good points.
I just have a question. What would happen if the state and federal government said, we don't have $5 million to give you, we only have $3 million? Where does that other $2 million come from? And what happens in a case like that? The townspeople have voted, if I'm correct, the townspeople tonight are voting on $20,222,000 as one of the figures that would be from the town's portion. But now the federal and state government say, hey, we're short, so we're only going to give you 3 instead of the 5 that's anticipated here. What happens to that other $2 million? Where does it come from?
Mr. Karen, and then I'll go, I think somebody on the committee has it.
I'd be happy to address that. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Budget Committee spent quite a bit of time on this very topic this year because it is such an odd year with the aid numbers being in such flux due to the economy. And the Budget Committee discussed at length setting the partition, so to speak, between the taxpayer's responsibility and the state aid responsibility. In the end, the vote that passed the Budget Committee was for a total appropriation, which is the motion that I made a few minutes ago. And I believe what we'll find is that if that motion of the Budget Committee carries, and if state aid were to come in short, then the school department could claim that they want their money, and it would have to be found somewhere in other budgets, primarily on the town side or a second financial town meeting or something like that. Now, the 2 amendments which I just heard, okay, seek to create a partition, it seems to me, which would limit the taxpayer's responsibility at, I believe the number happened to be last year's taxpayer appropriation. Thank you.
Mr. Burgandy, and then Mr. Ellsberg. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Martin, were you done?
I'm still somewhat confused. The chairman of the school committee said, how can we vote on federal and state aid?
Thank you.
We have no control over that.
Thank you.
None.
That's exactly
So
what I said.
why are we even voting on it?
That's right.
Why don't we vote on the appropriation that's going to come from the town taxpayers? And if they get $10 million, God bless you.
That's right.
But if you only get $2 million, then you've got to suffer and cut wherever the state and federal government's telling you to cut. I mean, would that make sense? Is that appropriate?
I have a question.
Mr. Burgandy, and then Mr. Ellsberg.
Yes. First of all, we have to be aware that the schools, this is probably the most regulated part of our business as a town. What's going to happen if we are not going to provide particular services, for example, to special needs students? The parents have a right to school, the school district, and the town. So ultimately, we are responsible by law to provide these services. We have no control over this. What's going to happen, I cannot tell you, but if there is one lawsuit, there is a specific cost to this. So there are some things we can absolutely not count. So this is, there was some discussion about maintenance of effort. So basically what this means is, well, if you have to provide services to fewer people, then you're supposed to proportionally lower your budget. To answer that question, that concern, which was floating around, is that the number of our students decreased since 2003. We did the specific count by 11%. We reduced our staff by 16% since that time. So we are very responsive to how things change, but unfortunately things change where we do not control them. If the contributions, we are the largest employer in town. We have more than 200 people working for us. If the state requires us to make higher contribution to the pension fund, this is beyond our control. So the fight is not with the school committee. We are trying to be responsible. We submit, we trim our budget to the minimum, but at the same time, you have to be aware that we are trying to also protect the town from potential lawsuit by making sure that we cover all necessary services. It's a lot of expertise which goes to this, and I'm certainly not an expert. I'm still learning, and I'm surprised sometimes by how many different mandates are placed in front of us, and no one asks a question, say, how are you going to pay for it? It's simply our responsibility, and behind every child, there is a parent. Think about your own kid. What are you going to do? If this child deserves X, you are going to fight for this. So all other parents have the same rights. We have to make sure that we protect the town from potential lawsuits, and that's basically what we are trying to do here. There's no fluff in this budget, and I appreciate that the budget committee actually looked at this and approved the figure as we presented to them, as we defended our budget in front of them.
Mr. Martin.
If I may add, I don't think anyone here is saying that there is any fluff in your budget. That's not. What we're saying here is the people of Tiverton are willing to give you every dime that they gave you last year and every dime that you're asking for. Now, if the federal or state government cut, we can't be responsible for their cuts. I mean, there has to be something that we can do to say to the state, look, you mandate these programs, you pay for them. And if you mandate them and you don't pay for them, we're not going to implement them. Very simple.
All right, thank you, Mr. Martin. Mr. Alzabea.
Mr. Moderator. Mr. Moderator, could I just, it's important, folks, to know that regardless of state aid, we are required by statute to provide an education to the children, just as every other district is. The statutes, quite frankly, and Mr. Robinson, who's our attorney, is here, and he could speak to it further, the responsibility falls on the local communities. I'm not saying that's fair, but the way the statutes are structured, in the end, that's who's responsible, and that's part of the inequity in Rhode Island, because we don't have a state funding formula. However, with that said, in the end, we have to provide those services to all our children, just not special needs children, because failure to do so, if we don't maintain our maintenance of effort, we could possibly not only lose what state aid will come our way, but also the state, and Mr. Robinson can speak to this, could possibly take aid from the town side. So it's the budget that we have forward is very responsible. It meets our needs. The cuts that are proposed with the motions today, this district will not be able to maintain its current level of programming, will not be able to provide an adequate education to all its children. And it's going to create significant difficulties, not just for the school committee, but for the entire town if these numbers aren't approved. Thank you.
Okay. Just procedurally, I want to be clear that at this point, the motion that we're speaking to is Mr. Mantel's amendment. There would still be an opportunity for a third. We haven't gotten that, so we're speaking to Mr. Mantel's amendment. Mr. Alzabea.
I will make an amendment to vote on what the town willing to give the school committee, and whatever comes from the state, it comes from the state. We cannot, nobody could run a business on a fake number. That number absolutely does not exist. You can't go into a scare tactic and say we can't teach. We cut back in our businesses, everybody here got back and lost jobs and got a pay cut, then they'll have to do the same thing. This number, 5.3 million, is wrong, does not exist. You cannot make it exist by scaring people. Does not exist. I can't do it in my business. Nobody here could do that. That does not exist.
The number that you see there, the 5.3, is not the school committee's number.
No, I agree.
No, our number is
You're making your budget. You're making your budget part of it.
We based our number,
Please,
sir,
Mr. Eric.
just for the point of order or discussion or explanation. If you look at the school committee's budget numbers, the 4.8 million is a lot closer to the number that we're seeing coming in from the Department of Education through the General Assembly. Nothing's been set in stone yet because the budget hasn't been done yet. But our numbers are the 4.8 number, which we were comfortable with. So when the discussion says 5.3, please note that that's not the school committee's number. Our number is the school committee requested number, because we recognize the problem with the state aid. That just needs to be clarified.
We willing in the town to give you an increase or to give you what the town people could control and vote on that first line.
So
that's it.
Do you have, I mean, there's already a motion before us on that, so do you have a specific dollar amount that you're suggesting, Mr. Alzabea?
I make an amendment for the people of Tiverton, just vote at a number they could control. And whatever comes from the state,
okay, I need
$20,222,014.
Okay, that motion's already before us.
Oh, okay,
So,
I'll second it.
But, no, wait,
Whatever it is.
I just want to explain. It is. The original motion included that amount. Okay, so there was a second to that, or there was an amendment to that, and then there was a further amendment. If you're making another amendment, that dollar amount would need to be modified in some way.
No, I'm not making change. My deal is to vote on what the people of Tiverton given them, not what the state.
Okay, and I understand that, but in terms of an amendment, there would need to be a different dollar amount. Let's see, I have Mr. Katz next.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the main motion. I move to amend it by substituting that the total sum of $25,352,915, comprising $20,046,960 for operating and capital budget from local sources, and $5,305,955 from general state aid, be appropriated for the school department in fiscal year 2010.
Okay, I'm going to repeat that to you in a minute, but I need you to state your name and where you
I'm
live.
sorry, Justin Katz, Arbor Terrace.
Okay, so I have the total, $25,352,915.
Correct.
The local, $20,046,960.
Correct.
And the state, $5,305,955.
Correct.
Okay. Did you want to speak to that since you're the last motion on the floor? We're now on Mr. Katz's amendment.
Mr. Moderator, could you please
you need a
repeat
second, I
exactly
believe?
the motion?
You want the motion repeated?
Could you please repeat?
The motion is
Repeat the motion.
to amend the Budget Committee recommendation so that the operating capital from local sources is $20,046,960. The general state aid, $5,305,955, with the total being $25,352,915. Okay, as the maker of the motion, Mr. Katz, you have the floor.
Just for procedural, did you hear a second?
Do I have a second? Thank you. Second.
I'd like to, regarding, actually it covers all three of these amendments that we've heard. If you look at what the Budget Committee has come up with, in the Town Council and School Committee, in figuring out what we can afford, they've made assumptions as to our revenue. That's on page 2. The amount of state and federal aid, again, as you said, this is a made-up number in some respects, is $5,305,955. These amendments that I've heard have all simply stipulated from what happens if that amount does not occur, whether the town is liable, whether the school committee has to come up with some other way. All these numbers are made up, and the budget is based on them because we don't have that information yet. I would remind everybody also that the contract for the teachers, which is
Point of order. Excuse me, I got a point of order. Are you suggesting, the number again that you've suggested for the appropriation is 20,046,960? Is that correct?
Yes.
Which is actually less than the number that was appropriated last year.
Right, which means that is out of order. I thank you for catching that.
Yes,
Because
the state law requires that they receive at least as much, the appropriation be at least as much as it was in the previous year.
Point of order.
My understanding, though, is that if the number of students declines, maintenance of effort permits an adjustment downward.
I'm going to rule that out of order if it's below the number that was appropriated last year. So if you wish to,
wait a minute.
Okay.
You are correct that it can be adjusted, but do you have the information on that? That has to be...
I'm not aware that I actually need that information to pass an amendment. These are questions of... I mean, if people distrust my number, they can vote my amendment down and vote for another one or the main motion if they prefer, but I'm not understand why All right, in the past 6 years, enrollment is down 13.5%, and tax spending has gone up 45%. I think if we're trying to show maintenance of effort, we've certainly done so.
Okay.
Could I...
Okay.
Mr. Moderator, could I,
I'm sorry.
Mr. Moderator, could I please ask the solicitor for school committees to answer this? Because there are some legal issues.
Point of information?
To provide information.
Mr. Robinson. Please grab a microphone.
Mr. Moderator, there are a couple of issues that, on behalf of the school committee, I'd like to address to the body and to yourself. First of all, on the maintenance of effort, there's a two-step process. First of all, you can consider a reduction in student numbers, but before you do that, you have to determine if there is sufficient funds to maintain the schools first. It's really aimed at places such as Middletown when the Navy moved out and 500 kids went out, and certain things of that happened. That's really what that's aimed at. So I would suggest that the suggestion that because there's a 10% reduction, you can reduce 10% of your budget is not correct under maintenance of effort. Secondly, it is settled law that you cannot include capital funds in school department budgets. That it's just settled, you're just wasting your time, and you're just creating litigation for the town. And finally, it's also settled law that the town has the right to set a bottom line budget for us. You don't have the right to line item. You don't have the right to assume what the state or others are going to. You have the right to set our bottom line. And you may set it at the level you choose, but you have maintenance of effort, and you have to set a bottom line. So I would suggest, frankly, under law, most of the amendments are out of order.
May I respond to that, please?
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Do you have a point of order or a point of information?
May I speak to my own point of information?
Go ahead.
Rob Coulter, Vice Chairman. I'd like to address a few of the things that I'm hearing. First of all, there's a lot of people up here that are opining on what the law is, and it's important to remember that it's easy to sort of say what the law is, and it's not always exactly that clear. The case that Mr. Robinson has just referred to, he has instructed the Budget Committee, has never actually come to pass. There is no question but that the enrollment of the schools in this town has gone down, and there is no question that this town has funded a cumulative amount of approximately $25 million above and beyond what was required over the last 6 or 7 years. So it is incorrect to say that this town is required to fund at least as much as last year. And it is also, although not incorrect, it is potentially misleading to come to you and threaten that if we don't spend as much as we want to spend, then we're going to hurt the kids and cut the services, and that we're not maintaining maintenance of effort. We saw this last year where we needed this money, we needed this money, we needed this money. No. I will move on to the second point, which is that this town cannot approve the bottom line. It is the position of the town solicitor that the charter trumps state law, and the charter does allow this body to go through this docket line by line. Thank you.
No, it does not. Excuse me, just again, Mr. Katz, I'm going to give you an opportunity if you want to modify your amendment, because I'm still going to rule that it's out of order because it does not, let me finish. Let me just, because it does not maintain the effort without you providing significant enough details to be able to know how to get to that number.
Okay, I'll amend my amendment, change it rather, to substitute the total sum of $25,353,916, comprising $20,047,961 for operating capital budget from local sources, and $5,305,955 for general state aid.
Okay, so I have local sources, $20,047,961.
Correct.
State aid, $5,305,955.
Correct.
With a sum total of $25,313,916.
No, 353,916.
I'm sorry, it was my scribble. 353,916. Correct? Okay. Anything further on speaking to your amendment?
I'd just like to point out that I disagree that that the legal issues are a matter of procedure for this particular meeting. An amendment is not out of order because there may be litigation. This body can submit the numbers that it would like to do, and that could be resolved after the fact. The fact that there are lawyers in the room who are willing to testify to the law does not mean that we are bound by their judgment.
Okay.
And I would remind people that Mr. Coulter is also a lawyer, so if he presents a different
He's
opinion...
not here to practice law, though. Our solicitor is our legal counsel.
Right, but if they're simply giving an opinion of the law, we can disregard that. We don't have to. They're not judges, they're not juries, and they're certainly not executioners.
Point of order?
Yes, a point of information with regard to that. The advice that's given here is to the town. The client is the town of Tiverton, and you're right, it's to this financial town meeting, as interpreted by the moderator. And you can listen to everybody. You can listen to all of the lawyers, including me, as to what the advice is. And this body, if there's an appeal, if you want to do it over $1, you can. An appeal going through the proper decision, an appeal of the moderator's decision and a majority vote and whatnot, can overrule that. Obviously, you do it at your own risk, but you are correct that the body can overrule the legal opinion through the moderator if you want to do it. I've provided you with the information. The moderator has ruled it out of order, but even a motion that's out of order can be appealed.
I'm merely stating the opinion that it is not the procedure that the lawyers in the room dictate the procedure of the meeting, dictate what's in order and what's out of order. We can vote on what we want.
And I'm agreeing with you, but there's a way to do it, which would be to appeal the moderator's decision if you wanted.
Right, but that's only if the moderator turns to the lawyers and takes your dictation wholesale.
Aside from that, we allowed you to modify that. I want to make sure there was a second to that modification, okay? So the motion before us now is Mr. Katz's amendment, which provides for local source appropriation of $20,047,961. State aid, $5,305,955. And for a total of $25,353,916. Okay? So with that, I'm going to move to the woman at the mic.
Do I have to have a discussion on that motion, or can I ask a question about a line item?
You can ask a question about a line item because that's part of the motion, yes.
Okay. Vicki Richmond, 327 Village Road. I would just like to understand, as someone sitting in the bleachers, which feel fairly sturdy to me, hopefully, I'm sitting there, is it a $100,000 appropriation for new bleachers? I'd like to understand that.
Okay.
The bleachers, the dollar amount that you see in the capital is for a 7-year proposed lease. If you would go under the bleachers, you would see that they're barely operable, and in some cases during games during the school year, we have to shut the bleachers down to be repaired. And they are in the process of, we're very concerned, quite frankly, even with a meeting like this, of how sturdy they are. We've had to shut them down. These bleachers are as old as the building. They're 40-plus years old. And they need to be replaced.
Please give your attention to the speaker.
And they need to be replaced. Part of the school committee's responsibility is maintaining the facilities. This is one aspect of our 5 buildings that needs to be addressed over the next 7 years.
But if you said they're being repaired, is that...
They get to the point where you can't repair them any further, and we're worried that we won't be able to use them any longer.
But we don't know that.
They're getting to the point where they won't be able to be repaired, and this facility will not be used not only for high school graduation, but for the town meeting as well.
So the lease is only, is it a zero buyout or dollar buyout at the end, or then we have to start again at the end of 7 years?
These bleachers are designed to last us for more than 7 years.
No, the lease, it's a 7-year.
The lease is a 7-year lease, would start July 1st of this year.
And then is it a dollar buyout, or at the end of 7 years, what happens?
There is.
Thank you.
Mr. Bennis.
Roger Bennis, Narragansett Avenue. Earlier in the meeting, I tried to correct an error in the docket by moving debt service for the schools to the schools where they belong. Now I'd like to ask you, where is the proper point to correct that error in the docket? I don't think there's any person here who's an honest person that can deny that the purchase of new schools to educate Tiverton children belongs in the school department. And I'd like to see it put there where it belongs. I've been given a lot of baloney over the last 20 years by various people trying to tell me that you can't do that. Well, I've worked on budgets for 40 years, and I've never seen such a messed up budget where things are in the wrong column.
Okay, but speak to your point, please.
To my point, where is the proper area in the budget to move the $2,733,142 from an obscure place where it's listed as debt service under general government that's who, what, what's that? What department is that in? To the department to which it belongs. I'm not calling fault to the school committee or the school department. I just like to call a spade a spade. To me, when you go out and get a bond for new schools, that belongs to the school department. If you want to buy a new fire truck, that's a cost of the fire department. If you want to buy 6 new police cars and you go out with a bond issue, that belongs in the police department so that people can make appropriate
Let me try to get an
decisions.
answer to your question. Okay?
Mr. Moderator, could the school solicitor answer legal aspect of this question?
Okay, hang on, please. You want to speak to debt service first, please?
The debt service is set forward in that item called General Government, as you noted, on page 7. And it is, in fact, listing each particular item, Fort Barton's, Pocasset, Ranger, the high school, and the sewer debt. So each one is there so that people can have it. I understand that you think it would be better shown over on the school department side.
It's not what I think, it's a fact.
Right. That's your concern. The budget is set, the docket is set by the Budget Committee. Our charter sets that forth. State law also provides that because the town owns the schools, the town owns those capital assets, that it be included as part of the town's capital budget, not as the school department. So it's a concern, and you've gotten your chance to point it out to people, and you can continue to do it as part of an issue. But it's one of those things, it's really just an issue of formatting that's been set by the Budget Committee, and it's not something that can be changed by the meeting. This is just a docket in front of you. It's not something that's being, if you want to change the order, make a motion to suspend the rules and vote on it out of order, something like that. But as far as changing the order of where something is on the page, that's not something that's in order to be done.
It's not the order in which it's in, it's the department in which it's in. And to state that it must be that the schools must be owned by the town, of course, I agree with you 100%. But I also say that everything in the school department is owned by the town. Who do you think pays the bills? The town pays the bills. Rhode Island doesn't belong in the United States. It belongs in, Tiverton doesn't belong in the United States. Tiverton does not belong in the United States. Tiverton belongs in the state of Rhode Island, and the state of Rhode Island belongs in the United States.
Okay.
By the same logic, not an opinion, logic.
Do you have
What is used for schools belongs in the school department, and the school department
First off,
belongs
Mr.
in
Bennis,
Tiverton.
you're arguing a point that's not before us. You came forward with a question. We're trying to respond to that question. So, Jeff, do you have?
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Bennis. I'd like to say, first of all, that this type of thing where expenses are lumped together in the wrong departments happens in this docket in a bunch of places. And I think anybody who is an accountant would agree with Mr. Bennis and say that something's wrong here because costs
Is this
enough.
an opinion or is this a point of information?
That's a point of information.
Please be brief.
Okay. On that basis, there are many places where this happens. It is something that was discussed at the public hearing that the Budget Committee will try to consider next year, a better format and layout to show the costs. And in addition, it was discussed at a Budget Committee meeting that perhaps some other techniques could be used to try to get the balance sheet correct from an accounting standpoint. And one of those ideas was that the school department leases the buildings from the town, and that would at least get a line item into the school budget for the use of the buildings.
Thank you.
So the only way you can do anything right now is to suspend the rules. Is to make a motion to suspend the rules. Otherwise...
All right, I'll make a motion to suspend the rules so we can put the $2,733,142 in the school department where it belongs.
Okay. So there's a motion before us to suspend the rules. It's not debatable, which would mean that we would move to that line item on page 7 and then come back It requires a 2/3 majority vote, so I'm going to ask for the counters to come forward. Is there a second to that? Thank you. I hear no second to that, so please, Mr. Bennis, if you have something on the current motion, we can do that. Otherwise, I'm going to move to the next speaker.
Then I would like to add
Is
the
this on the...
$2,733,142 to the bottom line of the school.
It's out of order. We're on the third amendment, which is the most allowed from the floor on any budget item. So that is out of order. We're not moving. We did not vote to suspend the rules. So I'm going to ask you to speak to the motion before us, which is Mr. Katz's amendment, or to allow me to move to the next speaker.
Looks like I'm like Diogenes. I can't find enough honest men to support.
Thank you. Well, I think Mr. Mantell sat down. I had him next.
John Souza, 178 Stony Hollow Road. I want to make a comment, a couple of them actually, because something that came up. Number one, debt service traditionally in every budget I have ever seen is a town expense. I have never, ever seen it in the school department. Be that as it may, it's a town function. It's voted on by the town. It's a town expense. Where it sits in the budget, as long as it's in there, is fine. Just let it be.
Thanks.
In response to something that Mr. Coulter said, and I have a question in that regard to Mr. Rarick. Mr. Rarick, if the enrollment has...
Mr. Souza, can you point the question to me and I'll...
Okay, I'm sorry. I'd like to know, the comment Mr. Coulter made was that enrollment's gone down 13%. I would just like a rough idea of number to number, like 2,500 down to something, if somebody has that approximately.
Mr. Rarick, would you have that information?
In 2003, 2004, there were 2,185 students in June of '04 for the '03-04 year.
Yeah.
Currently, there are 1,937 students.
So that's how many? Just do it quickly for me. 200?
About 200,
Okay.
ballpark.
Let me just say something from a budgeting perspective. That's 200 students. That's about 10%. The percentage doesn't matter. That's spread over elementary, middle, and high school. That's spread over how many teachers, Bill? How many teachers?
Currently, we have around, ballpark is 181, 182 right now.
Okay. 181, 182. That means of the 200 students that have gone down, it approximates a little over 1 per teacher. Unless you have enough students leave that you can eliminate a class, there's nothing you can do. A reduction in enrollment reduces only certain expenses, fewer textbooks. The majority of a school department budget is in labor. A slight decrease in enrollment, like 10% over 4 or 5 years, in no way affects that budget significantly because the staffing cannot change based on losing 200 students based over 12 grades. Can't be done.
Mr. Moderator?
I spent 15 years as a school business manager. I got a flavor for it. Can't be done.
Okay. Mr. Brigandi, unless it's a point of information that you
Correct.
have,
Could
I
I
have to
provide
move.
information?
What's your point? What's your point?
This year alone, we reduced the staff by 13
Okay, Mr. Brigandi, I'm going to ask you to go after
Oh,
the
I'm
gentleman
sorry.
in the hat.
I'm sorry.
Okay, first, I want to make sure Mr. Souza's done, complete.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Madam at mic 1.
Maureen St. Laurent, Hilton Street. I retired 19 years ago as the elementary school nurse. And you're talking about drops in enrollment, but I would like to know what is the increase in special education. All of us probably here in this room today either have a child, a grandchild, a niece or a nephew or a neighbor who is in special education. There has been a marked increase in the past 19 years, and I would like to know about that.
Mr. Rarick, are you able to provide that information?
Yes, we have the percent of the budget from 2001, 2002. I don't have the number of children in front of me that require services, but the percent of the budget in 2001-02 was 17.2%, and for 07-08, which was last year, is 23.3%. Our general ed population of teachers, I'll just leave it at that because that wasn't the question. But it has gone up by approximately 6% in approximately 8 years' time.
And because of the increase in special education, I was the only elementary school nurse, but because of such